and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who would like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you.
Hello, I'm Tom Dillon, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Helen Leathers. Hi, Helen. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very excited that we have the first of our coaching doctor interviews. So we have a special guest joining us today.
We do indeed. So today I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Sarah Goulding. Sarah is a GP and coach. She's a portfolio GP and head of coaching at the Joyful Doctor. And she's passionate about giving yourself permission to thrive as your full self and not just what role you fulfill to others. I love that. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Helen. Hi, Tom. Lovely to be here.
Do you know, just quickly, we met at a networking event a few years ago, didn't we? And I was doing a talk and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, there's a doctor in the audience. I really hope she agrees with the things I'm about to say. And it was wonderful because you were sat at the back just nodding your head in a full agreement, which gave me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, we did. And it's so interesting, the ripple effects that have come on since that meeting, really.
Absolutely, yes. Because you came to our coaching conference and then you were on one of Tom's early courses. That's right, Tom?
Our very first course. So
yeah,
yes.
Early adopters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, we are very thankful for the fact you've been a great advocate of our training ever since. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, and well, it's had a big ripple effect for me as well.
Great. Well, hopefully we'll find out a little bit more about that as we interview you. So, what really got you started in coaching, Sarah?
I'm trying to work out whether to give you the long or the short version. I'll give you the edited précis. I've always been interested in the individual and deeper connections with people. And as a GP partner, I struggled with the fact that you didn't have enough time to do that. And actually, I ended up burning out as a GP partner. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do next because my identity was so wrapped up in being that role. And actually, I wasn't very well, which I didn't realise until I'd left. And on the day I left the job, I got an email asking if I wanted to be a mentor to local GPs. And I had this kind of, road to Damascus moment. I was like, oh yes, I did always want to do this, but that was back in the day. I'd always been interested in medical education, but really I wanted to be able to go deeper than that. And that started my path to go, okay, I could do mentoring, but what else? What else can I do? And I started following these various strands. And then I found Caroline Walker from the Joyful Doctor, and she said, well, no, you're very natural as a coach. You've obviously got those skills. And I didn't really believe her, as I think is often the way, even though as a doctor, you do loads about communication skills. I was teaching various things. I was specialising in communication skills as a medical educator. But it's very hard to see yourself as something other than the role that you've been kind of desperately following, jumping through hoops and groomed to be in. And I kind of deliberately use that slightly provocative term. So I just followed that path to see where it would lead me. So I think when I saw you, Helen, I was doing a job that actually I hated and I didn't feel comfortable in because I was trying to find a way of making it work as a doctor outside of standard NHS practice. And so that's why I ended up at this networking meeting. And so when I saw you, I was like, oh, this is brilliant. And you were talking about leaning into your superpower as a woman. Yeah, I'm definitely into this. So I started just consuming more stuff about coaching because doctors really don't have a clue what it is.
Interesting. We've been talking about that on a previous episode, the difference between coaching and mentoring. And
I certainly see that in doctors coming to the programme, that they go, so just what is it? Yes, that's kind of first session. It's that, what exactly are we learning here? Even though they've signed up to the course.
Yeah, even my husband, who is a doctor, and I said, look, you could really do with some coaching. Oh yeah, well, they're just going to tell me to do this. I was like, have you no idea of what I do as a job? That is the exact opposite of what a coach is going to say to you. Um, So
Yeah,
yes, trying to get that message out there and help people really understand it is tricky, isn't it?
Absolutely.
absolutely. So you came to one of our early transformational coaching diplomas,
The first one.
the first one.
Yeah.
And we often joke that Tom has stolen you from me and that you should be my friend, because I met you first.
Oh, I love that. Yes, fine. It makes me feel very special.
So you attended that course, you completed your qualification in transformational coaching. What happened next?
And it was a really interesting time because it was deep in the pandemic. And I was trying to work out what my role would be because I was staying at home, I was looking after the kids. A lot of my roles, and if you look at the list, there are officially 7 on there now. A lot of my roles just had to go to nothing. So it was a bit of who am I? And with this, just that whole process of being coached and going, no, actually, you do have to sit here and have some time to think about what you need and what's going on for you. And also doing some of that deeper work for yourself to see what it's like was exhausting, actually, but very powerful. And it was an absolute joy and just absolutely lit up my love of both learning around it, but also the doing of it, and went, yeah, I can do this. And actually, I really love to do it. And actually, I really think I could be good at this. I think, it was just confirming what I hoped would be true, but you don't really know unless you're willing to give it a go. And then there's the pathway after that where you go, okay, well, how do I find people to actually, come and do it with me? And are they going to think I'm okay? And what's that going to be? And who do I want to work with? That sort of niching aspect, and what's that going to look like, and how do I run myself as a business? And marketing, that feels a bit grubby. I'm not used to that. I'm meant to be just doing it vocationally. Shouldn't I be doing it for the good of man rather than wanting to turn it into a business? So it was a huge area of growth. And then social media, what does that look like? How do I feel about it?
I think most doctors have this, if they do want to branch out into coaching as a business, have these challenges that are exactly what you've just mentioned. They're so used to that vocational aspect of what they do. Like you say, aren't I meant to be doing this for the good of man and woman, etc.?
But it's also not recognising those strengths and skills that you bring. So I had someone that said, oh, well, I think I have a bit of a fear around running a business. I said, but you're a GP partner. You're running a business.
Yeah.
So, oh, yeah. Well, I think it's about charging. And I said, well, but you're an appraiser, so that gets charged for. And just that, you do this. You just don't recognise that you do it. Yeah.
I think there's a complete lack of perception among the medical profession as a whole as to the level of complexity that we work within in the system, and the level of responsibility, and all their sort of the pluripotential aspect of us. And I think that's partly because we very much come up through a system where, in order to, they talk about see one, do one, teach one. That's medical education in a nutshell for procedures, which is terrifying. But in order to be qualified, you have to have a certificate. You have to have a piece of paper that says that you can do it. And I had to really think about, was I doing the diploma just so somebody said I could do it? And there was an element of that. But there's also the element of going, well, my unknown unknowns, what are the other tools in my bag that I've got? And I think part of that process of going, I'm doing a lot of this already. I am a lot more skilled than I perhaps gave myself credit for. And so it's a real period of internal growth, I think, in terms of trying to see yourself as something other than a product of the system, and what else could I be? And yes, you can feel vocationally about it. I would genuinely say coaching is the thing that I feel most passionately about in my portfolio. Easily, it's my favourite part of the bit of what I do, because of its capacity to just spark change for people. It's so powerful. But I think people don't understand that, and I certainly didn't either until I did it.
So you had all these challenges around starting a
Mm,
business, but you have now gone into coaching as a career,
yeah.
and you work with the Joyful Doctor as
Mm,
one of their coaches, in fact, their head of coaching.
mm.
How are you finding that?
Yeah, I mean, it's boggling, really, when I look back a few years and go, where was I then and where am I now? And why didn't I do it sooner? And actually, it's part of the process, isn't it? And I think
Mm.
it's a real privilege to be able to do it and genuinely feel, yeah, I can do something of use to people. And I think you can feel vocationally about something that also pays you to do it. I think that's okay. It's it's a mindset shift,
Yes, and it sounds like you've got to a really good place with it.
definitely. And I think sometimes you just need to have enough time, experience, chats with colleagues under your belt before you maybe really feel that. I'm not sure.
So what are the different ways that you're using coaching now?
Yeah, lots of different ways. As Tom mentioned, I am also an appraiser. I've been an appraiser for over a decade, and I'm very much using that as a space for people to have important discussions going, okay, yeah, we can tick the boxes, sure. I said, right, we've done all the box ticking. What would be of value to you today? And actually, I did one last week where I helped that person with their decision about whether they were going to leave their GP partnership or not. And it's helping it just be a bit more meaningful. So I'm using it as an appraiser. I definitely have used it as a mentor, and I am using it in my medical education as well. I think it's harder to use it in short form as a GP. I've definitely used it with my daughter. Yeah, it just it leaches into you integrate it into you, don't you? And I know I've heard Tom talking about discussions with his son, and it just becomes a part of the way you think. It changes fundamentally how you approach a problem, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm not sure children are the best people to try it out on. Your own children, I think children fine, but your own children, they're a little bit resistant to you.
Yeah, if they know that you're doing it, yeah. My teenage son, absolutely, I'd never get anywhere near. But my daughter's much more psychologically minded.
Although my daughter had an incident at work that she was telling me about, just doing that, sort of dumping on me about it, and I said, "So what could you be doing?" And she said, "Don't even start."
Yeah, don't do the thing.
Yes, so I didn't do the thing. I just listened.
Mm,
So talking of doing the thing, when
mm,
you're doing the thing that is coaching, when
mm,
you're being a coach,
mm.
what would you say is your favourite tool?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I think particularly for doctors, they are absolutely atrocious at being kind to themselves. So for me, it's the Gestalt empty chair exercise, or a
Okay.
version of, to help them. You're moving to that other part of the discussion. What would you say to yourself? If it, what would you say to your best friend in the same situation? Is the layperson's version of it, to help them see themselves worthy of receiving compassion and able to consider change. Because I think they get very fixed in this, I have to continue, I must martyr myself in whatever, I don't have the capacity to change things. So that sort of macro view, bird's eye view from above of what's going on, and can I consider myself worthy of change and self-compassion, I think is very powerful.
It's
Wonderful.
very pleasing to hear you talk about Gestalt.
I love Gestalt. I bought the book, and then I'm not a big non-fiction reader because my attention span isn't great. So I still would love to come back and look into it more. But yeah, it really struck a chord for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it is a great
Excellent.
that empty chair. We've not discussed that yet on the podcast, but it's a great exercise to do with coachees. It's a great way to experiment with their thinking around a subject.
Yeah, and the neuroscience fits for it. We know that we feel very comfortable giving compassion to other people. If a friend gives compassion to us, the neural pathways are a little bit more resistant. But when we try to give compassion to ourselves, the pathways in our brain go, oh no, I don't think we'll let that come through. So we're not wired to receive it. I don't know if that's an evolutionary thing, but I think it's very powerful to tell people that, this is why you're having a hard time, and thinking.
And maybe if we did it more, the pathways would start to embed.
I think it's like anything, it's a muscle. I've become so much more self-compassionate in the last few years, and I'm tuned into those unhelpful voices, or things that I can throw in the bin, or just pick up on it and say, oh, I've noticed that my brain's being a bit unhelpful today and telling me this, whereas I don't think that's actually true. It's just giving you a way of viewing what's actually going on and whether that's the truth or not, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from tools to questions, what would be your favourite question to ask someone? It's a hard question to answer, I think. But
what I like asking at the moment is, when we're getting towards the end of a session, saying, what is the most important thing that you've heard yourself say today?
oh, I like that.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah, I pinched it from
That's a
someone
good one.
else.
Borrowed.
Because yeah.
Yeah.
it was part of a coaching CPD thing, or supervision. Again, the tuning in to the, I'm saying stuff, and what does that actually mean, and let's really let that sink in.
And that links with the idea that as coaches, playing back what people say in their own words can be super powerful.
Yes, and I think early on I probably got a bit I think I probably lent into that a bit too much, because it felt like I can do that. We do that as a doctor. That's really easy. I can go, so what I'm hearing you say is, and then I thought, how can I move that on and put it back to them a little bit more?
I love that.
I quite often have people that I reflect back to, and they say, did I just say that? So sometimes I think the playing back is important, just so they can hear it back, so they know that they've said it. I actually had a demonstration I was doing on the course recently, and someone who was watching said, oh, you introduced this, and not sure why you introduced. I said, because she said it. She said, did she? I didn't hear that. Sometimes even when you're observing, you miss things. But yeah, and that's a great question. And we've got, obviously, you've seen Tom's Code, this new model that I've created, and we have that bit at the end, which is, what did you know now that you didn't know at the beginning? So it's one of those questions, isn't it? It's what have you heard yourself say? What's important here? Yeah, that's great.
And it's finding language that feels authentic and comfortable to you, isn't it? Because I think early on, when you're learning to be a coach, it's all about okay, what's the next right question for now? And you get a little bit obsessed with it. And I think getting that confidence to turn it back to the coachee, because that's, again, where the agency, and that's where the power lies, takes the pressure off you as well.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So you've mentioned all the roles that you have in life, with your appraising and coaching and working with the Joyful Doctor, etc. When you're not coaching, what are your hobbies and interests?
Well, they change every 5 minutes, really. No, I am often doing battle with my garden, and the garden is usually winning. I'm a voracious reader. And I have a group of friends where we have a random gig club, and the rule is, if somebody says, right, I want to go and see this, we all go yes, and we just go, even if it's not your thing. But the latest version of that was going to a silent disco in a disused church, which was absolutely joyous.
Wonderful.
So lots of socializing with different friends.
And really honouring that you have absolutely the right to go out and do those things, and you're not caught up in work in the same way perhaps that you used to be.
Definitely. And one of my antenatal mum friends, I remember there was a time as the kids were just getting a bit older, and we went out, ended up going to a club. And I really love my dancing. I really go for it, big style. And I remember my friend just looking at me going, who is she? Because she'd only seen me as a breastfeeding mum who was exhausted, who could only talk about, nappies or is my child teething? And then she suddenly saw this version of me that didn't include any of those things, that was always there underneath. And it was a really euphoric evening. And I just remember both of us just going, not just a mum. And I
Not
think,
just a GP.
exactly. And I think that's why I feel so passionately in terms of working with doctors around their careers and trying to integrate the what are your values at home and work, but don't neglect the home bit to allow it to be that full self, because I think there can be this pervasive feeling that really you're just a function of your job and the rest is a bit irrelevant. That kind of Venn diagram, which if you had a Venn diagram where you'd have one big circle inside another, a bit like an egg, what would be work and what would be life? And again, I think as medics, we can struggle to get perspective on that and how we would like that to be.
Wonderful. And finally, what would you say to any doctors who are thinking of adding coaching into their professional development plan?
I mean, I'm an absolute advocate of it, as you know by the number of people I've sent your way.
Yes, thank you.
I just don't think you can. I just don't think it can go wrong. I've never heard anybody that's done any form of coaching training that's ever gone, well, how rubbish was that? I didn't get anything useful out of it. I've always had people raving about their training and gone, oh, it's just so amazing. It's so brilliant. I'm so glad I did it. Because it's just got so many uses. It's a life skill that really people should be taught much earlier in life as a way of giving themselves a bit more agency around their own thoughts. So yes, powerful ranty fan.
Wonderful. That's fantastic to hear. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing a little bit about you and your coaching journey with us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure Tom will agree.
Absolutely,
to see you flourish.
I say you were there at the beginning. Still my favourite.
Hey! Can I have that laminated, please?
It's been great to see you.
Thank you, Sarah, so much.
My pleasure.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.